Dr. Meera Sarma spent years as a cybersecurity researcher profiling hackers, examining facets of cybercrime, and the deep links to physical terrorism and the dark web. Meera subsequently completed her PhD on hackers, information systems, at the University of London. Meera has worked with a number of public and private sector agencies in consulting roles. With 20 years of cumulative experience in consulting as well as researching and publishing in areas of cybersecurity, digital transformation, and AI/quantum computing, and contributing to the UK's Parliamentary Office of Science and Technology as an expert on cybersecurity and quantum computing. Dr. Sarma set up cybersecurity and quantum computing company Cystel. Cystel is underpinned by scientific research and years of experience in the field of cybersecurity and quantum secure technologies.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Steve. Much appreciated. So I think in this session, I'm going to touch upon quantum and GRC and setting the stage that we're not going to dive into the algorithms or the crypto, but we're going to really talk about what does it mean? What does it mean for governance? What does it mean for risk and compliance? And there's a reason for doing that. It sort of takes us into the work that we're currently doing right now, and I'll come to that in a minute. So quantum GRC, we're preparing. How do you prepare yourselves for the quantum era? Now, who are we? So we're a research-driven cybersecurity company, and we touch upon different themes that includes AI and quantum. And we talk about quantum transformation here because I think the time has come where we're moving away from digital transformation onto quantum transformation. We work with clients in banking, healthcare, critical infrastructure, telecom, and recently we partnered with PwC in the MENA region to offer quantum services. So Thomas is right now in the US. He's on a trade mission to Atlanta. I'll be joining him this weekend. There's a quantum mission from the UK going to Chicago because, as you all know, they're building a massive quantum park in Chicago. So lots of collaborative opportunities there. And we've talked with Steve, who's kindly able to join. He's the head of cyber consulting, and Rishi is the CIO. Now, why are we talking about quantum GRC today? Because of the work we're doing right now. So in the UK, we are rolling out quantum communication in the next couple of years. That's being led by British Telecom. So what does BT want to do? They want to roll out QKD. Hopefully, we don't know yet. There will be a link to this project. It's called the QSO project. It's one of the largest quantum projects running in the UK right now. There will be a website set up with links to it, so you can see the progression of the work we're doing, on almost a weekly basis. So our remit for this project, and we're working with NPL that set the standards in the UK for quantum, with HSBC, who will be the end client. It's driven by BT Toshiba and 4 other universities. They've got King's, they've got Cambridge, in an advisory role. We've got Loughborough, Bristol. So for those of you who know the UK ecosystem, these are the organizations that have quantum labs. So there's a lot of testing being, so the QSO project looks at testing out quantum before that's implemented. Now, how do you test quantum for cyber? It doesn't exist. So this is why we come back to the question of GRC, and our remit in this particular project is to look at the risk, identify and develop a risk structure that enables organizations to understand a bit more around quantum and cybersecurity. So we're developing scorecards, ranking mechanism, looking at the likelihood and impact of cyber threats, and what that would mean should organizations start adopting quantum technologies. This also includes training and awareness, and we will come to that in a bit. So what are the quantum threats to cybersecurity? Why are we even discussing this today? A lot of advancement. If you look at the state of quantum hardware, there was a lovely podcast that I was on with Lloyds Bank about 2 weeks ago with IBM and Oxford University, where they're really talking about state-of-the-art advancements. Now, what we thought would happen 30 years ago, they say, quantum computers are not here yet. That's incorrect because IBM has already launched 4 of them and is currently being used. There are lots of other advancements happening in the quantum processor field, from trapped ions being used to superconductor qubits. And there is an issue of scalability here, which is also being challenged. And there are lots of other work that's being done to improve scalability. and to make sure that we are quantum hardware ready. I was in a call with DARPA last month, and what they said was it really, your jaw would drop to the floor, because for them, quantum is more of disruptive technology than the internet. So really interesting times that we live in. And so the scalability issue is what they were discussing. They want to see quantum, commercialized quantum computers within the next 5 years. Whether it happens or not, I don't know, but that's the plan. Now, what are the timelines for the quantum threat? So the quantum threat has been getting closer and closer and closer. In our discussions with BT and Toshiba, we have really come to understand they've been working on this for years now. 10 to 15 years ago is when we started talking about quantum and qubits. And a lot of the discussion came on the back of Grover's and Shor's algorithm. NIST got involved a couple of years ago to try and ensure that people remain quantum safe. And how do you migrate people, take people on the journey? And this year, as we all know, NIST released those 4 standards, asking organizations to start implementing them to become quantum safe. Now, why is this important? Because obviously it's all about store now, decrypt later. Quantum computers are here, they are being used, but they're not commercially viable in a way that everybody can use them. So a lot of actors, state-sponsored especially, and we know this because we work in a few different areas, they're starting to, sort of steal data now, waiting for the right time to be able to decrypt. And this poses a serious threat to all of us. Now, why do we need, so that leads us into a world of post-quantum cryptography. Why do we need this? Because of emerging quantum threats. The fact that NIST has come out and said, we'd like people to migrate to using post-quantum cryptographic standards. And a third and really important point is long-term data sensitivity and long-term data security. This is really critical because we can see that there are lots of organizations in the biotech, pharmaceuticals, defense industries that have a lot of sensitive data. So when we talk about data security, we also need to talk about data sensitivity, because that's where this really comes in. You don't have to have a lot of data, but if the data that you have is sensitive, that becomes a problem. And that's when you need to sort of understand how do you migrate towards PQC. What are the best practices for cryptographic asset inventory? And I think we'll hear from the second speaker a bit more about this. What do organizations have to do now? They've got to really take stock. I mean, it's really shocking for us, the number of organizations that we are talking to right now. We say, do you understand your asset mapping? Do you understand where your encryption sits? And they have no idea. So this is a real challenge for organizations right now, making sense of asset mapping, understanding, doing audits and regular updates, and managing access control. So all of these 3 things are really, really important to make sense of your cryptographic asset. And how do you store them? How do you protect them? And how do you get agility? So if you look at some of the kind of regulatory and compliance considerations, there's a huge impact on risk and quantum breaches. It can undermine the reputation of stakeholders. It does. And if you lose sensitive data, that's when the regulations kick in, right? You can see a lot of fines coming in. Had a very interesting conversation from a large organization today who just said, and he said to me, I don't understand why why insurance companies are actually securing, why do they offer insurance for those organizations that are not PQC secure? Why would you secure their data? Why would you insure their data? Because if they're not PQC compliant, they should not have insurance. So that was a very, very interesting conversation for me in terms of what organizations should be doing or what is likely to come from the insurance sector over time. Supply chain vulnerability, part of a project on QSO looks at this, because let's say if BT starts to come in and starts rolling out quantum communication, there is that knock-on effect on all of the supply chain coming in. They have to become quantum secure as well. And that integration of all of these organizations feeding into some of the larger companies brings a lot of vulnerabilities and risks, and it could compromise cryptography. And that is why there is a knock-on effect on supply chain, and they would have to get ready as well. So what are the current and emerging quantum regulations? We're seeing this coming from different angles. I'd love to hear thoughts on the BSI document. We have digested that quite a bit. The BSI have released, but they've done it for QKD specifically. They've released extensive documentation on mapping threats, on giving it certain values and looking at what could happen when you start implementing quantum. That's a really interesting document to read, but also the standards that have come out of India. The Indian telecom standards have rolled out. If you take that together with what NIST has come up with and ISO as well. So there are quite a few standards of this. The regulatory sector is picking up pace from what we're seeing. Huge GDPR implications. So for those of you who are in this field will know that when quantum comes in, it will break privacy laws. I think it's clause 51A, 51B that really looks at privacy in more detail. It'll have a huge impact on that. This is why we have to get ready for quantum computers becoming mainstream. So if you look at, we've spoken about the NIST cybersecurity framework. There is a way, so what we are trying to do is to use the NIST cybersecurity framework, which really talks about your maturity levels, and start applying it to quantum as well. So to get organizations to become quantum ready, can we start mapping, starting to give grades between, let's say, 0 to 4, and look at the extent to which organizations have certain, how mature are they? To give you an example here, we did a bit of work for a bank and we thought they were fairly mature. They told us, well, we know cryptography, we know where we are. And when we went in and we did the work for them, we sort of realized that they were using a lot of outdated systems. They had outdated encryption in places. And that told us that in terms of where they thought in terms of their maturity levels was not where they were. So there's a huge difference between where we think we are and what is the reality. So one can adopt the NIST cybersecurity framework and use it to try and map quantum on top of that. I'm very happy to dive into this at a later time if needed. The ISO standards, so this has actually kicked in as well. So ISO 27701 has really brought into place quantum along with AI regulations. This is just a little section. If you've read it, it's just a small little section, but a lot of the organizations have started to take notice. Those who are in the GRC field, who are running a lot of these GRC organizations who are into this, have started looking at this a little more intently. So the risk assessment integration, framework adoption, and looking at continuous improvement are 3 different elements that the ISO standards bring together. I only have about 15 minutes, so I am sort of rushing through these slides a bit. So what can organizations do right now is to get proactive. How do you assess quantum threats? How can you start getting onto the collaboration journey, and how do you do continuous drills and training to ensure that you are on the right track? So the key here, so there is a new role that has actually come across that I've seen for the first time on LinkedIn, which is the Chief Quantum Officer. Never seen that before. So this sort of tells us where some large organizations are moving towards in creating these new roles, and the fact that quantum is being taken a bit more seriously than it was. So what are the future directions? Now, this is really important because it's not sufficient to say that, yes, from a governance compliance perspective, we are adopting those 4 standards that NIST has come up with, but it's more about crypto agility. And crypto agility simply because these algorithms that were, introduced now may not stay for longer. Organizations need to understand how to become crypto agile and how to shift as and when required. So crypto agility for post-quantum is really, really important. What are the next steps? What can organizations do? You've got to look at your resource compilation, and I think this leads quite nicely into the next speaker's talk, which is about, do you really understand where your assets lie? And do you understand, if you know where they are, and if you know that they're not up to scratch, what do you do with them? How do you migrate them? How do you become crypto agile? what we are doing, we are running quantum GRC bootcamps. We are looking at NIST, looking at all the standards out there, and we've created bootcamps for leaders, for managers to try and understand how to make sense of it and how to develop that crypto agility. Thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you, Meera. Are there any questions, ladies and gentlemen? You could just ask them straight away. So Wim, are there any specific quantum regulations in this too? Yeah.
Sorry?
Sorry, Wim asked, are there any specific quantum regulations in NIS2?
No, not yet. No.
Okay.
That will come, but not yet. No. I think your best bet is to look at the cybersecurity framework and try and build quantum on top of that. That's what we are doing.
Understand. Okay. Are there any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? I'm just trying to go through the comments here.
I have a question, or maybe when you are going through the comments there, I think there was quite a bit of discussion.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I wanted to ask you about this with the insurance, because I think it's a very interesting point.
Yeah.
Like something similar that I heard was that if US, for example, implements post-quantum faster and we are lagging behind in Europe, then that might interrupt our customer relationships, because you won't be able to sell to US some of the products if they do not comply with the security. What's your take on it? Like, how fast it will be changing? Because
it's going to come in very quickly as soon as, and I think the conversations are being had as we speak. And that's a very interesting point, Anna, because what's happening is as soon as insurance companies realize that we're protecting something that's actually not secure. We are insuring data that's not secure. So we talk about data in rest, data in transit, and they are both not secure because of quantum computers, right? And as the capabilities grow, insurance companies will start to take a step back and say, if you haven't implemented, the new standards coming in, if you're not hitting on the governance compliance. So let's face it, we live in a world where everything is compliance driven. No organizations don't typically want to spend on cyber unless they have to. So what will happen is, that will be the key driver, is the insurance industry saying, well, your data at rest, data in motion, we can't really insure. And that's a huge problem for companies that do have, like I said, it's not about the quantity of data, it's the quality of data. And, biotech, pharmaceuticals, those are critical industries which will have a problem. Sorry, that's my bell going off or something. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I'm just looking at some of the comments here.
Yes, what's the perspective regarding the recent Chinese paper using D-Wave advantage?
I saw that.
What's your view on that?
I'm quite happy to share my views privately. I think it's, there's a lot that's seen as speculation, but like I said, we work with companies that work in different sectors, and they are saying this is not speculation, this is happening as we speak. This is the reason why you're looking at three main industries that are very quick to adopt quantum. That's defense, that's telecom, and banking. And they're all doing something about this already. And there's a reason for it.
Yeah, understood. And then I ask, as quantum technology advances, how likely is it that cyber attackers or malicious organizations will use it and gain access to it? I think we all know that that's probably happening now, right?
Yeah, it's already happening now. It's I think the biggest threat, like if people recall what happened with SolarWinds, does anyone remember the SolarWinds incident?
Mm-hmm.
And they were footprints of more than 1,000 people on it who were lurking in those networks for years and years and years. So a lot of what we're seeing are state-sponsored and could be state-sponsored. So absolutely. In fact, hackers would be, a lot of hackers work in these networks. There are two main groups. You've got the state-sponsored attackers and cyber criminal networks. They probably liaise with them. And there's enough money to train them on it.
Mm.
I'm sorry, I've seen a question from Raphael. I don't know. Sorry if I really, if I didn't say this clearly enough. To be prepared from advanced attackers, and I meant in the quantum field specifically, and I'm talking about the ones that we speak to. So it's not a blanket statement to say no organization is prepared. I'm sure there could be hundreds out there. Like I just said, the defense and banking sector are really good with this. And very well prepared, actually. But I think the companies that we are talking to in all the other sectors, the question we get asked is, what is quantum? So I think from that perspective, we're not seeing enough companies looking at this seriously enough.
Great. Yeah, I think that's. I think a lot of people on here are exactly the same opinion. It seemed as a future problem, and I think that we normally talk about this in terms of market stages and things going from future problem to hair on fire, and I think this is likely to become a hair on fire problem very quickly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Meera. Thank you very much indeed.
Cheers.